Home is where connections are made, memories are formed, and ideas are born. And no one knows home better than NFM. Thanks for tuning in to I Am Home, the podcast that goes deeper than trends and dives into what it means to make your house a home.
Amy Myers here from NFM headquarters on a special edition of the I Am Home podcast. It's Women's Month, so we've invited an esteemed panel of female leaders across our organization. I'm here with Robin Messerly, our Chief Information Officer. Hi. Megan Berry Barlow, our Chief Human Resources Officer.
Hello, hello.
And Nora Gomez, our Chief Merchandising Officer.
Great to be here.
Yay. And I'm Amy Myers, the Chief Marketing Officer. So pulling this group together in Women's Month to talk about leadership, and we'll talk a little bit about work culture and connection and just a lot of topics around kind of our experiences. So thanks for joining me today. But before we get to that, let me tell you why we're even here doing this podcast. And that's because NFM is more than just your everything home store. We're in the business of improving lifestyles. Learn more at nfm.com. So I'm a guest host today. Tyler Weisskopf is our normal host, and he does a much better job on the sponsor message than I do, but he's got it going. So we have got this group together. NFM, we love Women's Month in March, and we spend a lot of time celebrating it. And a lot of it comes from our founder, which is Rose Blumkin. And for those who don't know, Rose Blumkin was born in Russia, came to the United States. I think started in Iowa. Is that
Fort Dodge, Iowa.
First,
My hometown.
oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, that's a funny connection.
Yeah.
Originally came to Iowa and then moved her family to Omaha. And at 1937, which actually she was 44 at that point, which I think is kind of interesting. I was
That's
thinking,
amazing.
Where
right?
she was when she actually started NFM in the basement of her husband's pawn shop. And she started with this mantra of sell cheap and tell the truth. And that started the Nebraska Furniture Mart history. Now we're over 85 years old, and we've established ourselves as the single best source for furniture, flooring, appliances, and electronics. Now we've got 4 different stores. We'll be opening up a 5th one in Austin in a couple of years. In 1983, Rose Blumkin sold the business to Warren Buffett to become part of the Berkshire Hathaway, and really started the long-term partnership and relationship between NFM and being a Berkshire Hathaway company. So it's something that I think all are inspired from internally and talk a lot about, really staying tight to what she did and how she grew the business. And, being an immigrant, I think didn't speak much English when she, originally started. And so Women's Month becomes just really important to us and very meaningful to the origin story of NFM. So that's why we're here today.
Can I add something
Yeah,
to that?
please do.
Okay. So a story that I love, her actual leaving Russia, she bribed a border guard with a bottle of vodka and said, here, drink this. I'll be back in a little bit. And he took the vodka and she never came back.
Love that.
So me
The little bit
too.
of,
She'd use whatever she had.
it's like a movie.
Mhm.
Doesn't
To
sound
come
like-
here and create a better life for
Yeah.
not only her family, but all of us that work here and everyone who gets to shop at NFM as well.
I think that's something too. Like she knew what was going to sell to this guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, and she sold it cheap and told the truth.
Yeah. A woman's intuition, right?
She knew what she was
Right?
doing.
She knew it.
So
Mhm.
we're going to start today, just kind of jumping right in. And this group is all on our executive team and part of our C-suite, and there's a bigger group. But one of the theories that is kind of talked about from a women's leadership is having a seat at the table, or I think sometimes people say being in the right room. And we know that means that you've gotten to the point where you're in the right room and you're part of the conversation, and you have access and you have voice. But I think we probably recognize in this room it's not always that easy. Just getting in the room is not always the same as being heard. Those can be 2 different steps. And Nora, I'm going to start with this one for you because you mentor a lot of people, and I know that you are often encouraging voice. But how do you coach people to find their impact and how to have a voice when they're in the right room or at the right table?
First and foremost, it's important that if you have that seat at the table that you've so desired in your career, it's your duty to use your voice. That's why you're there, right? And how you got there is also part of the journey. And so there was someone that probably advocated for you, that invited you to a meeting, let's say, and said, hey, you know what, why don't you listen in, and then all of a sudden you get a little flavor for what it's like to be at the table. But make no mistake, there is a lot of humbleness that comes with getting a seat at the table. And what I mean by that is really being comfortable with what you know and understanding when to use your voice. And that takes time and grade and expertise and listening skills, right? And I know we're going to talk about that at some point. But it's also about, if you have something to say, don't say it just to be heard, right? It's most important to listen, learn, and if you have something of value to contribute, go ahead and do that. That's why you're there. And again, I go back to, it's your duty. And people are counting on you, because 9 times out of 10, you're there representing your team, you're representing their ideas, you're representing, maybe an initiative that is important. And that's how you find your voice.
I remember one of the first like rooms I was able to be in. That was it was kind of early in my career, but it was the first time I was kind of joining a bigger meeting, and I was very conscious that I was not being heard. And I went and I pulled someone aside who was like a very senior, I think it was SVP in the company, and I said, how do you do that? Because everyone listened to him. Like, how does that happen? How do people hear you? And he gave me the worst advice. He said,
Don't do this.
He said, no, he said, I said, how does that happen? He said, you have to be right. Oh, yeah. And I think that sort of paralyzed me for a while, because it's like, it's looking back now, it's so rare. Right is not a black and white. There's an opinion and that idea that don't speak up unless you're right, because that's what he told me, and that's what I took away from it. Was actually, I think, a few steps back for me for a while.
So it's interesting, because that goes back to being comfortable with what you know,
Mm-hmm.
and being comfortable with what you don't know. And I always like to make sure that, as much as possible, that I'm the most prepared I possibly can before I walk in that room. And if I don't know anything on the subject, I'm going to be that person that is truly listening with both of my ears,
Mhm.
and my mouth is going to remain closed.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that can be misconstrued as you're not engaged, or your mind's wandering and going somewhere else. But there's a lot to be said to, it's an underdeveloped skill, I think, listening. And
You know
the
what,
more
Nora?
we,
I have the same tactic sometimes in work. And this could be just, whether it's an executive level meeting or just a cross collaborative project you're working on, sometimes you really don't understand. And it's hard to ask questions because you don't want to feel like I don't understand, or I don't want to look like, well, everyone else here knows what we're talking about and I don't. I have to do it a lot, particularly around technology and technology strategy. And I've just learned that it does not diminish me when I want to know more. And I have to kind of tell myself that, like, I'm not diminished for my desire to understand more, because I know in the long run that will help me provide more if I know more.
Yeah.
But you do a good job there of asking questions. You don't, without having any knowledge, just issue like a statement or like, this is the way it should be. You're really good about saying, what's this or what's this.
I mean, it's legitimate. When you don't know, you ask, right? Like, we should all have that comfort. And
I think a lot of times you're asking the question that others in the room are also wondering, but haven't spoke up. So
we
I
all
always
have that bubble
appreciate it.
over our heads, right?
Yeah.
I got your back.
Yeah. And I had an experience like Amy's. Kind of my first seat at the table was a previous employer. And, I'd worked really hard to work my way through the ranks, and finally made it to a position where I was invited, to the executive team. And I went into that first executive meeting full of nerves and excitement. And I mean, I found that the conversation was really dominated by 2 or 3 people, big voices. And, the room was full of a lot of people with great experience. And I felt like every time I tried to speak up, I was just spoken over or disregarded. And so I spent the next few weeks really trying to build relationships with they were new colleagues to me, right? I mean, we didn't have relationships and being in a new role. So, and really trying to find an assertiveness and a confidence in sharing my opinion and my thoughts. And so that next executive meeting was, an opportunity for me to do that. So I think being invited, it did.
Yeah.
It did. I mean, there was a critical conversation, and I weighed in with expertise and experience, and people listened. And so I think being invited to the table is the first step, but really being heard is a much different, Nora, to your point, you have to be confident. You have to know what you're talking about. You have to present yourself, and don't be afraid to speak up. So
I think I had this vision that you walk in and they'd be like, "She's here. She's tell us all of your thoughts."
But you know,
But
Surprisingly not that way.
think about it. We are programmed as children to go to the big kids, the adult table,
Yeah.
right? And that's not unusual in cultures at all. And so from the minute we're kind of groomed and we're sitting at the kiddie table, we're like, okay, when am I going to be old enough to sit with the big kids? And then you get the seat at the big kid table and you're like, this is boring, kind of thing. But when you think about what it is that we're rooted in, that's really interesting. I wanted to share my first seat at the table. And it's different. It's not my first seat at the leadership table, but it's what I would like to call my first seat at a cultural experience table. And I had just joined a company, and we were taking our first trip to India, and our CEO asked me, what is it that you're most excited about to see? And I said, maybe I've said this story before, but I'm most excited to see how the $1 mirrors are made. Now, these $1 mirrors we sold at the cash wrap, and they were beaded. And so I thought, it's kind of a frame, and you put a bunch of glue around it, stick it in the beads, and you're done. There's a $1 mirror, right? I mean, we sold hundreds of thousands of these a year. And he said, really, out of everything, you want to see that? And I'm like, I do. And so we went to the factory, which really was a room off to the side of the showroom that was set up with a card table, basically, with all of these gorgeous, beautiful Indian women who had boxes of beads by them and tweezers and little glue spots. And they were placing every single bead by hand. For $1, we sold these, right? And so I pulled up a seat, my own chair at the table. And of course, I'm obviously not, I'm the odd man out, let's say. And there was a lot of laughter, and snickering and things like that. And so I took my very large American fingers and was trying to place, a bead on my mirror. And it was hideous. The process was hideous. And this lady sitting next to me handed me tweezers. And, she showed me, she actually held my hand and guided me to put how to pick it up and how to put it. And I thought to myself, I'm probably one of the only people in this entire world that has experienced something like this. Yeah. Well, then I learned the story. And the story was behind these women was that they came from broken homes. They may have been abused physically. They may have had a child out of wedlock. And this factory that we were at actually provided housing, schooling, and a means of income so that these women felt like they were part of contributing to society. And the circle of women really meant something. And I think that's where I really started to understand the impact of what you do, how it can affect people all around the world, simple things that we take for granted because we live in such abundance in our country. And knowing that you're really influencing them putting food on the table and being able to have a safe place, to raise their family and a safe place to work. So
It's
that's my
such a-
cultural seat at the table.
But it's such a clear reminder, everybody has value. And
Mhm.
sometimes you don't know it. And as a leader, maybe it's your job to either ask or discover, but yeah, everybody has value.
100%.
What a great story.
I love that.
I thought you were going to say you slathered it with glue and stuck it in the bucket. And like, it would be easier this way.
I always, this is just fascinating. I
Well,
have
that's a great
I do
story.
have the one I worked on, and then I have the one that I worked on after I had help.
You still have them?
Uh-huh, I sure
Oh,
do.
So cool.
What a
Yeah,
great
it's big.
reminder.
Yeah, as I say,
Mhm.
Yep, sure do.
no one probably understand what you get from that when you look at it.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's good memories. All right, so I'm going to switch our topic a bit. I think we all get asked about remote work a lot, and our worlds have changed a lot, and we've got all different versions of that. But there's so much discussion around it right now because of people, pulling people coming back, and then the debate around that of whether it's a step back and not a step forward. Megan, I want to start with you because you were you were and are the head of HR when we went through this huge cultural shift here, and you're the voice of the employee, and then and not only with your own team. What do you reflect on? We're almost 5 years. We're a few weeks away from those first few moments when we started doing our everyday morning
Everyday.
calls that we
Yeah.
still do today.
Yeah. My key takeaway from that whole time is that if you work in an organization or live in a family or have a friend group or whatever that has high trust, it's really not hard to make massive shifts and still value relationships and be successful in whatever the objectives are of that group. So at Nebraska Furniture Mart, like most people, I mean, this is a retail store. You think you come to work every day. We pretty much had a couple of things had really worked in our favor. Again, speaking for the HR team, we had started testing like a 1-day work at home prior, and most of HR wasn't really interested. We kind of like each other and like being together. So we didn't have a lot of takers, and but we had a few, so we could kind of test how that works. And then the other thing that was just pure like timing, we had started to roll teams out
Uh-huh.
prior to COVID. So I remember when I invited someone from Robin's team to come show us, and it was almost like a dog and pony show. Like at the HR meeting, we're like, let's look at how Teams works. It's this neat thing. We'll be 2.5 weeks later. I'll never forget. I had 2 HR managers in Omaha that work. There's 2 offices in between them down the hallway. So there are 4 offices, and they were trying Teams, then yelling down the hallway, "Can you see me?" So that worked in our favor because I do think technology and other, processes and tools can really help that. But as an organization, we were forced, like so many, to quickly shift. And as soon as we could get back, we did, for those that needed to and for those that wanted to. And that's always been a thing here. Every employee is always welcome to come work on site. Doesn't even matter if you work in a different region. But I really do think that our ability to extend, we have a very loose work at home process, I guess. And loose is probably not the right word. Some people only work at home every once in a blue moon. Some people only work at home. We hire people based on talent that maybe are 8 hours from a store, that there's no expectation they come to a store, but it's all based on trust. And so what I hear so many businesses doing with these super dictates of, well, I realize for 5 years you've been at your house, but tomorrow I want you to come back 100% of the time to this workplace. It doesn't take people's feelings into consideration. And please understand, I believe as a manager and a leader, you have a right to say people should be here some of the time. I'm not saying that. But there's no value of the person and what that means. And there's no consideration for, let's figure out a plan that works for everyone. And can we measure your metrics while you're working at home? Because, I've said to lots of managers, if you don't know how to measure a person's work when they're at home, you probably don't know how to measure it when they're in their office.
Mhm. Mhm.
So yeah, I really believe that it's not something we knew about NFM as an organization, but we really trust each other and we let everybody kind of figure out how it would work best for them. And that has led to a way that all of our staff still feel really valued. And if they want, a lot of them get to work at home occasionally. And a lot
Did
of
you
them
change anything? Now, 5 years, looking back, do you look back and say, I would have done that differently in hindsight?
actually no.
Mm.
I mean,
That's
no. The fact
nice
that
way
we
to
were
feel.
forced to do it helped.
Yeah.
the fact that we had, again, technology partners. I have this great story. I have a vision of me setting up this massive computer system in my mind. The tech guys have way better stuff. But, you know, I had like 2 screens and risers and all, and a keyboard at my home on my kitchen countertop. And I had my cell phone because Teams, again, wasn't quite up and running as the way it is now. I was showing Rob, a guy that everyone at NFM will know, like, where do I put this plug? Like, how, you know, like that helped form a relationship that, you know,
Yeah.
so I wouldn't actually change anything. I think we were forged out of necessity. And then we made the decision pretty quick that we were going to continue this, and we put some structure around it and are still successful to this day. So
Yeah.
I'm proud
Robin,
of
you
that.
probably have the most remote team of everyone, like more consistently. What's the experience been for you? And is there anything lost? Like, is there anything that you?
Yeah, we have about 270 people in IT, and about 99% of the folks are 100% remote. So there's been a lot of lessons learned. And I think looking back, I wouldn't have done it any differently either. Now, I think if we had just tried to dip our toe in a remote workforce, it would have looked much different.
Yes.
Yeah,
But
that's
like you
true.
said, being forged into it, I think we did an amazing job of it. But so some of the lessons learned, my staff, they're used to, prior to the pandemic, I had 6 people that weren't in Omaha. And now I have about 50
ton,
people that aren't even near Omaha, and some that aren't even near a store. So it's proven that when I have things that I need to ramp up staff, like for quantum growth or succession planning, or, you know, retirement planning and single points of knowledge and that type of stuff, where you're trying to add staff, it's been powerful for us. And, you know, from a recruiting standpoint, being able to say that we offer remote work has been, you know, a bonus for us as an employer in the community, because there are so many employers that are saying, I know you've done great for 5 years, but now you have to go back to the office. So it's been a benefit of ours. I think another, you know, some of the feedback I get are people really excited. They feel like they've got a lot more time in their schedule for work. And they feel like, you know, I don't have this commute time. I don't have the water cooler talk. I don't have the drive-bys. And they also are thankful that their kids don't have to be in daycare as long, because now they don't have to figure out how to get them to daycare and then have a 40-minute commute, or, you know, and then pick them up 40 minutes later, because, you know, so they feel like there's just a lot more work-life balance. They like to decorate their offices in a theme that is suitable for them, you know, that gives them harmony and joy. And so, you know, it's not cookie cutter anymore, and it's what works for you. So, but we have had some negative learning lessons too. And I don't know if any of you have experienced this, probably not if you're residents, but we've had people that are actually overemployed. And that's hard to know when you're going through an interview. You know, they seem like a great culture fit. They seem like, you know, their technical skills are what you're looking for. So you hire them, and all of a sudden they're not showing up to meetings, and they're not meeting their commitments, and you can't see them on Teams. And, you know, we follow a process called Scrum, where every day the teams check in and they say, what did I do yesterday? And what am I doing today? And if you continually don't meet your commitments, that dysfunction surfaces pretty quickly. So,
Which is good. That's how you
yeah,
manage it,
right.
Yeah.
So we've had to manage some people out of the organization when you know, it seems clear that they're employed somewhere else too, and they're trying to collect a couple of paychecks.
You know, I was just thinking, we have and this is way pre-COVID. Shout out to Jeff Lind, our Chief Strategy Officer. We have a process we do at Nebraska Furniture Mart every day called Take 10. And it's meant to be like a 10-minute stand-up that's in the industry. Well, that started before Take 10. Everybody in the whole company looks at the same information every day. And Take 10 has given us, even if you're virtual, an opportunity to still gather, to still have like a rallying point of information. So again, that's one of those legacy things that only helped us. You know, if every day everyone's going to spend a couple of minutes going through this quick list of important news for the company, shout outs for sales staff that had great customer loyalty stories, et cetera. It's a really nice way to still feel very connected.
Yeah.
good communication. One thing that I see, and I'd be curious if you guys feel the same way, is I do think with virtual meetings, listening can become a problem.
Yes.
Because it's just not the same as when you're sort of in a
You're
room, like
right.
looking people in the eye. So do you have a story? Just
I'm
laughing.
just kind of chuckling because listen, screen fatigue is real.
Mhm.
And
is.
we sit in some meetings all day and you're kind of sitting there going, okay, I have all these things on my desk that I have to do. How can I pretend I'm listening and actually get some of this stuff done? And if you don't think that's happening, you're fooling
Oh, no,
yourself,
no,
right? I mean,
foolish.
it's happening.
Mhm.
And you could be the most patient and stoic in your stature on screen and you are actually not even looking at people and answering emails or and we're all guilty of it I think that there does have to be some grace with that and like we talked earlier about finding your voice and about how listening is more important than talking, then that becomes the challenge, right? You are sitting there trying to listen, trying to multitask. And once you stop multitasking, you're like, okay, what are we talking about again?
Mhm.
And you're really engaged as you're looking at everybody. But it's very easy to lose track. And so I'm not a big fan of all day marathon meetings like that
Mhm.
on a remote call. I'm not a big fan because I don't think there's any one person that can say, I understood and listened to everything and I walked away with every point and learned everything that everyone was trying to teach.
Yeah.
Agreed.
It's impossible.
Mhm.
So I like Teams and I like Zoom and all of the other technology. I especially like it when you need to get a quick decision done.
Mhm.
And rather than trying to juggle everybody's calendars and run to each other's offices, you can throw a meeting on the calendar and say, listen, if you want to be part of the discussion, show up. If you don't show up, your voice isn't going to get heard. And so the pivoting and the decision-making process could be
Mhm.
accelerated greatly.
I remember I used to work at Kraft Foods, which was a huge campus. And I remember how big of a deal, like finding rooms. I'd have to like look it
Yes.
up on the map and then plan your
Gosh.
walk because it wasn't, and I was
Mhm.
pregnant. So I was always like, and just like, you think now, I'm sure that's entirely different and they're not doing it because you wasted so much time just like
Yeah.
running around.
Yes.
But I do think the knowing when to listen and when, you might be able to multitask and,
Mhm.
because I think sometimes there's some decisions there that like, there's three of us. I know you're multitasking.
Mhm.
Right? I mean,
There are some strategies.
focused.
Like I've learned if I back my chair away from my desk where I can't touch all that
I've
stuff,
done that. Yep.
that's when
Mhm.
I'm a fidgeter. So I have like slinkies. And so at first I didn't have them at home, but I have those things at my home office now. So if I can keep my fingers employed with something else, it's a lot easier for me to look. Because to your point, Nora, if not, I'm typing away.
And standing helps too.
Mhm.
Standing.
We dusted off, Scott Baker dusted off some old standing desks that we had, around. And I reached out and asked him if I could get one on my desk and just knowing that I have that option. Now, sometimes I feel like I'm trying to orchestrate, standing there, but it does take you away from the
Yeah.
access of.
Using the emojis helps. Like, because that's like, should I be hearting this,
Yeah.
clapping this, or making the, oh my God, what'd you
Keeping
say?
you
Face.
connected. Yeah.
So I do have to struggle. I'm
Mm-hmm.
with Team Nora on that one. Like
Yeah.
I struggle a little bit with a long period of time and just watching the tiny boxes.
Mhm.
Well, I think I violated like a huge management rule the other day. I think it was just
Do
yesterday.
tell.
I know, right?
Yes, we
This
can
is-
write you up
just-
later.
No,
Amy,
this is
don't
like
worry.
it's not an NFM rule, but just that idea that you never cancel a one-on-one, right? You've set up a one-on-one, and that is the time that you've given this person in, and no matter what. And it was the last meeting of the day. I had been on Teams the entire day, and I just reached out to this person. I can't give you 100%. Like and I
fair.
want to. So I said,
That's
can we?
trust.
That's
I said,
fair.
if we can jump
Mhm.
on and you have any urgent, but otherwise I want to give you my all. And I just knew I was wiped. I was absolutely wiped, which violates every management book that you read that they're like, you never
Although,
do that.
But it's better for them.
Yeah, and Amy, like, what a way to model your humanity to your staff. Like to just be like, I'm not a perfect super executive mom marketing person. I'm a human being too.
I can
And
empty out.
I've had
Mine's
enough.
empty. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I just
Mhm.
think being able to share the realities of that with
Life.
people is
Yeah.
fantastic.
But you're
Me
right. There
too.
was a trust I did have with the person too, that like I knew they you know, that if they
Yes.
needed the time, they'd say, no, I actually do need it. I
Mhm.
trusted that, and I trusted there. So, but yeah, that was my team's culture. Let's shift to company culture. We kind of talked about it a little bit. Like I think our Take 10's company culture, remote, but it's something we talk about a lot, but so many companies talk about it. I think it's like still hard to define and like to really articulate like what it is and what happens. And we've got like the opposite here, because we've got, you guys have been here, 20 plus years, and we're newer for the NFM, although we've been here like 5 years now. Tell me what you guys do in your teams to keep culture going and what's important to you. And can I start with you since you're my last?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
Give me-
Go around the table.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was a big focus of ours and my leadership team when we went remote, because it, such a huge shift in how to manage culture and keeping the teams close. And so some of the things we've done is, we really encourage cameras on, and we do as an organization. And I think it's great because I think when you can see somebody's face and their body language, it really helps you connect and know that
That
they're
is a very culture
listening
thing,
and
I think.
engaged.
Yeah. And I know you. I
Yeah.
can see you.
Yeah. And then our folks kind of work in teams. They have what we call stable teams, and they all have their little names and their team norms. But most of them spend at least one of their touch points each week doing team building or just talking personal and keeping work out of it. So talking about kids and the pets and, vacations and stuff like that. So I think that helps. And then most of the teams do still meet in person periodically. And those that live 8 hours from a store, they join virtually, but most people can get together in person. And then we've also started doing some of our annual events. Like this year, we celebrated Diwali virtually,
Mhm.
which
So
was
fun.
so fun.
Uh-huh.
We had a lot of people dressed for Diwali and lights and decorations, and told stories and shared some of the food. And so we've discovered ways to do that. And that's a big part of our culture, celebrating diversity, which I'm very, very proud of. And like our annual Secret Santa, we do that virtually now too. We have folks that get together here, but if you draw a name, from somebody in Texas, you send them their gift and they open it up on screen with us. And
Fun. That's
yeah,
fun.
so we've
Very
we've
fun.
just found ways to be, I think
Joy.
leadership,
Like you bring joy.
keeping it at the forefront of their mind is really, it's super important, and just making sure that especially when everybody is very busy too and stressed, trying to inject fun into the day and making sure they feel appreciated and loved and, like we're a family. It's super important. And so, again, I think just keeping it at the forefront of our minds as leaders and trying to make sure that our
Make sure
culture
it's
is
important.
intact. Yeah.
You're like the culture captain. Let's
You
be
Culture
are.
captain.
You
I
are.
need a hat, or like a hat and some wings.
Yeah.
I was thinking of probably my favorite story. I have two, but I'll tell you both. But the first one. So when we were opening our first organic growth outside of Omaha was Kansas City, and we realized we had a culture, but we hadn't necessarily sort of identified it. There was a whole long process. It involved multiple meetings and graphs and charts. So it was a very analytical
'cause
process.
graphs and charts are culture.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But actually what you're saying, it's funny because what you're saying. So once we figured out like where we were and what we wanted it to be and everything, we had core values already, but we needed to put behaviors behind it. Because people don't get culture out of a graph. You show them an example of someone doing this cultural thing you want to value. And the one I want to tell you about, there was many, but this one I love. It's Brian Japp. We had a young couple that was in the Omaha store, and they were signing up for their wedding registry, and our wedding register kiosk was down. So Brian Japp, who is not in human resources, does not want to know about this couple's wedding plans, her dress, what flowers, are you going to wear your grandma's veil? He is an IT guy, but because that kiosk and the way it ties to our inventory system was critical, he walked around behind this couple with a piece of paper and a pencil and wrote down every item they wanted to order.
Love it.
And then once we fixed the kiosk, he went back and entered it into their system. So all their friends and loved ones could come and shop for them at NFM and make their wedding the happiest day of their life and improve their lifestyle. But that is a story about how we value people and what your role is in this organization. So shout out to Brian Japp. And maybe a more current present day, something we've started doing in HR. We are in the office, but no one is in the office every single day all the time. So we have a puzzle that we put out on sort of our common workspace. And so you can come and you can do a couple pieces of the puzzle today, and then you're not back in for 2 more days. And when you come back, oh, the one that's in the Omaha HR office right now, I just saw it last night. The disco ball got finished. It's a sparkly disco ball. And so I was putting my hands on it and I was like, oh, it looks cool. It's sparkling. And then it was like everybody that works here played a part in it, even if I didn't see them or I wasn't there with them at the time it happened. And I should say, if any of our employees do listen to this, this started in our the Colony store in the Dallas market, the store that we have there. That HR team started. But that's one of the ways that we, are still together in our culture is we're all working towards the same goal, even if we're not here on the same day, looking each other in the eye.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, 6 years into it, still in the single digits like you. And, I try to explain to people what our culture is and how we upstand or I should say how we stand it up and lean into it. And people can't believe what I talk about in terms of, there's a true loyalty and a true passion for this organization and for the people in the organization. And that is very real. And you feel that every day. When people are frustrated and come to me and we talk about things, I said, well, I can honestly tell you, having worked at many different companies before I landed here, the grass isn't always greener, right? And so pay attention to the news. Look at the news and say, okay, Joann Stores, how many people did that affect?
Yeah.
Right? Look at, some of the other large companies and people who are losing their jobs, not because of performance, but because of they're not making it, right? It's out of their hands. And if people really kind of were able to hit their pause button, as I like to say, Jocelyn, that one was for you. If people are able to hit their pause button and truly take a look at what's most important in life, I don't think that they would be as quick to criticize or as quick to come to judgment. And the culture that we try to have and upstand here in Omaha transcends, Megan, to your point, to Kansas City and transcends to Texas. That's culture. Now, there are things that we do here that are kind of honoring the past while we're creating the future is probably the best way I can say it. And we're getting more used to looking at ourselves as an organization and really trying to figure out what is it that we could be doing differently. There's a lot of things that we may think are broken, but we would not have the successful business and the successful retention rate that we have if there was a lot of things that are broken. I look at it as whatever is broken can be fixed. And whatever we have to do to transition ourselves and be relevant, that's what this whole group of people are here to do. And we have to embrace that. And so you have to honor the past and what got you to the dance. That was for you, Irv, and be able to, build on the future with innovative thinking, with culture innovations, culture appreciations. So that's kind of how I look at it.
I love that. Anybody else on culture?
I do have just one quick more story. I was just sitting here thinking, this is back
Felt
from
like
that
there's so many
original
stories.
exercise.
Yeah.
So again, we asked employees to submit these stories so that we could pick the ones that really resonated. And so, our founder was Rose Blumpkin. Her son, Louis Blumpkin, one time came to work and there was a worker that he knew that, so this would have been many 30, 40 years ago, did not have a coat on a cold winter day in Omaha. So he asked someone else to get him a coat, but he said, don't just get him one. Would you buy a couple so that he has a choice and that he feels like, nobody wants to feel like a handout in life. You want to feel like a hand up. And that story to me resonates with our customers as well. There's people who are making their first purchase.
Mhm.
There's people that just
Mhm.
decide on a whim, I'm going to redo everything in my house. So everyone's at different stages of life. But if you continue what you said, Nora, about like valuing the person and valuing the experience, your business will be successful. Your people, because you've got customers that love you because you love them back. You've got employees that are loyal because you've been loyal to them. And there's no way, you have to show people what that looks like. You can't just tell them, be good to our customers. You tell them, be Brian Japp, walk around people with a pen and paper.
Right?
Be Louis Blumpkin.
Yes.
Let
Yeah.
somebody have
Yes.
respect and value and dignity while you help them be warm. Like those are such core stories.
They really are. Last year, I had the honor and the privilege to speak to a group of our esteemed vendors and a group of different retailers that were part of our consumer electronics and appliances business. And I was really nervous about it. And the reason why I was nervous about it is this was such a big deal for the organization. First of all, to have a female keynote speaker. And then, of course, I know my audience, and I've got my bosses, I should say, sitting at the table.
You were the first
And-
female keynote,
Mhm.
right?
I was the
Right.
first female keynote. And it was at one point, I think I shared with everybody on one of our morning calls how nervous I was. And Irv said, why don't you just ask Chat GPT to write that for you? And I said, no, if I did that, then it would not be from the heart. And I'm glad I did it from the heart because I was able to, with that presentation, talk about the journey and how NFM came to be, talk about Rose having a heart of gold and a backbone of steel, and then also talk to people as a collective group about how important it is that we focus on hiring the person and not the package. And having different people who I've really never talked to before on a one-on-one basis come up to me after that and saying, you know what, that really spoke to me. That really mattered to me. Now, I will tell you, I had a naysayer who was sitting at the table to my right, and I could hear this person going, oh, great, we're not going to talk about this again, are we? We're not going to talk about this again, are we?
Oh my gosh.
And I'm up there, like, just remaining cool, calm, collected. My husband was in the audience too, so I knew I had backup. I needed so shout out to Keith
Well, you
Gomez. But
Johnny Nerves,
and Tony and Irv and John
Yeah.
Riddle, the head of the organization. But afterwards, the women that were sitting at this particular person's table came up to me and said, I'm so glad that of the things that you talked about and the things that you said, because some of it was emotional, but a lot of it was based on fact about that broken rung, about how women don't get the FaceTime, about, those types of things that are, we think that we've come so far, and we have, but we really haven't. And there's so much more work to do around that. But even putting that aside, really focusing on the person, hiring the right person, making sure that person feels valued, is incredible. You hire people that are smarter than you. And if you don't, then you're probably not making good hiring choices, right? And
Yeah.
so shouldn't matter what the package is.
I love that story. And even the fact that someone's still saying that when you're speaking just shows why you need to say it, right? Why it needs to
Exactly.
be said.
I'm glad.
You're
Yeah.
proving my
Yeah.
point, right?
Yeah.
You gotta keep going.
Right there, kind
Yeah.
of point it out.
You want to stand up and say that?
Well, last question, and we'll kind of shift to, because we've talked a lot about kind of company and leadership and our experiences, but let's get like personal what do you guys do for like self-care to take care of your own mental health, physical health, to be what we want to be, which is highly productive and doing our best work and coming at 100%. So, which I, to my other story, where it was not the other day. So anybody want to start with that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I come from a family of athletes. So I raised 2 athletes with my husband, who's an athlete, and lived in an athlete world for a very long time, not taking, putting all of them first,
Mhm.
and not taking care of myself, and have gone through an incredible emotional, mental, and physical transformation over the past 18 months and continue on that journey. But I go back to what we talked about earlier about listening, because I fought listening to them for so long. And it was like, no, forget, you guys do that. I'll just work and you just go, kind of thing. And so here I am, in the second half of my life, and understanding how important it is for me to be very aware of my mental well-being first and foremost, because if you don't have that, your physical well-being, it's already messed up. And being really in tune with that, what you put in your body. And I'm not perfect, but I'm learning every day about things, and exercising. Oh my gosh, what was that? I hadn't done it in 20 plus years, and can actually go up and down steps now and don't need to have oxygen at the top of the steps. And I took all of that for granted.
Yeah.
And when I look at myself, even 6 years ago when I joined the company, and I look at myself today, I do feel like I'm looking at 2 different people. And I feel like I'm a very different person. And because along with that comes confidence and bringing your whole self to be the team that you lead and the people you work with, the customers that you serve. So it's not easy every day. It's not. And I also put myself out there, and I am a huge fan of the Daily Coach that's led by Michael Lombardi at NC State. And he is of the Vince Lombardi family. And I put myself out there, took myself out of industry, and joined a peer group that is comprised of people who are coaches, high-level executives, just all different walks of life that come together and kind of share their stories, whether it's a leadership story, whether it's a best practice. And it's taken me out of my retail comfort zone, and really exposed me to people outside of that, and knowing things that you're going through, people are going through too, and just teaching each other life lessons.
I love that. What's your
So I have 2 main ones, I guess. And I'm a jock, and I always have been. Love to run, bike, swim, do those multiple times a week. Did yoga this morning, not well, but I did it. I every so often I recommit to meditating, and I've never gotten really great at it, but I enjoy it when I do it. So a lot of those really traditional things, but something in terms of self-care, and it's about me being authentically me all the time, is at work. I'm sort of in the twilight of my career. It's not like the last year, but I'm closer to the end than I am to the beginning for sure. And the end is in sight. And I care about people. And for a long time to be an executive, particularly in the HR space, the way that you sort of weren't softy, which talked about numbers, savings and healthcare plan, and targeting payroll budgets and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like I've done that, and I do that, and I've already proven that. And so I've really committed to myself and to my boss. And you might have heard me say this before. So
Yep.
I'm going to care about people out loud at work. I'm going to make that okay to do. And so for me, that is really rejoining the Megan that lives in Weeping Water and the Megan that works at Nebraska Furniture Mart into the same person. Like, I care about people, and it's okay to do that at this level of my life and career. And if it's not, like I said, I'm in the twilight anyway. So
Yeah,
It
Yeah,
is.
but
yeah.
out loud.
I
love that.
Care out loud.
Care out loud.
That's
Awesome.
awesome. Yeah, I would say that my self-care, kind of my there's a lot of things I do. But the older I've gotten, and the, empty nesting and all of that. And now I'm a grandparent, so I've got more time for myself. But I think the biggest thing is how I start my day. So I take time every morning to just, in a dark place where it's quiet. And like you, I've tried meditation. I've never gotten good at it. I can't quiet everything as much as I should, but Tony's given me some great tips to work on. But I practice intentional gratitude. So I really try to focus myself on the positive things in my life, set a positive tone for everything that's great that's going to happen that day. And then I go from there to my workout, and I do it every day. Like you, Megan, I've kind of always been a jock. Every day, no excuses. I get it done. And then when I get to my desk, I spend the first 20 or 30 minutes reading. So getting caught up on industry periodicals, whatever it might be, but just spending some time reading. I think continuous learning is really important. So all of that morning routine is good for my soul, and it gets me in this mindset that, okay, now I've taken time for myself, and I can go give all of me to my teammates, to my peers, to my work. So that's
And
probably
Robin,
my
I
biggest
know
hack.
You refuse to like do your email. Like you don't even peek at it before you've done the meditation and the workout, right? Now,
No.
granted, if there's a crisis, that's different, but like
Right.
you really commit time to yourself every morning. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love the
sure.
routine, like that you've got it kind of down
Mhm.
to a routine.
Yeah.
That's good.
What about you, Amy?
Yeah.
Mine is really, I think I have a couple of things. Sleep. I'm huge on sleep and sleep quality and good sleep habits. And I think it helps my health. I think it helps my mental health. And like, I feel like when I'm in a really good pattern the rest of my life, when I've got good sleep. So I think it's critical to health.
That's great.
I like to read as well. And that's like a good
Mhm.
mental detox for me. But the other thing, which actually my best friend just connected this for me, who's my college roommate, who's still my best friend today, but I coach track outside, which you guys know this.
Mhm.
And I thought of it as something different, something I did for something else. But she actually said recently, she goes, no, you do that so that you're better at work, because it
Mhm.
like clears my mind, and it's something else I
Yes.
can focus on, and something else. And it makes me then better at what I think she's absolutely right, but I had not made that connection until like she called that
cool.
out
Yeah.
recently.
Yeah, it's
So-
not
Very
the
cool.
other Amy, right? It's the whole Amy.
It's the whole
Right.
Amy.
Yeah.
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 So I think that's because I always
Some
wonder, why do I
balance.
keep going back and doing this? But I know there's reasons. 'Cause I try it, but
So wait, I have
Okay.
one quick last observation. I'm sitting here and I'm thinking of the tradition of like Native American women with storytelling to keep their tradition alive. And I'm just like, this is sort of the modern day version of that. Like it's a podcast. We have these
podcast, but
giant
yeah.
microphones, but like it is still storytelling
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
women gathering to care about people and be successful and help other people be successful. And like how neat to know that tradition that spans many other cultures is still alive and well today. So thanks for that opportunity.
Yes.
Well,
Thank
and
you.
Thank
guys
you
are
very much.
that for me every day. I mean, with our little group chats and
Yeah.
reaching out for support, and I think it's just
Yeah.
it's part of our culture, but it's also our
Yeah.
small, and add Elizabeth to that, who's not
Yeah,
here today.
yeah.
She's definitely part of that as well. So let me run through our closing. Thank everybody who's listening at home. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review the I Am Home podcast, and then hop over nfm.com events to learn more about our company, all the amazing events we have celebrating the incredible women of our communities this month particularly. We'll be back again with another episode. I want to thank Tyler, who's not here today, who's I'm subbing in for. Thank you to Ann and Scott, who are behind the scenes
Thank
and
you.
running
Thank
us
you.
today. We have we have a women's panel that we're running in all of our regions, which we've got some great guests that will be really just speaking about different topics around Women's Month. It's in Kansas City. It's at our store on Saturday, March 29th, 10 a.m. Our moderator is Abby Eden, who's a Fox News host, and really thrilled to have her. Christy Melville will be there, Annie Austin, and Jennifer Bryan. Saturday, March 29th in Omaha. We are also doing the panel at 10 a.m. And then, Omaha Sunday, March 30th. Texas is Saturday, March 29th at 10 a.m. So please join us. It's open to the public, and you can buy tickets online.
Fantastic. And oh, by the way, I misspoke. Mike Lombardi is UNC. So, Michael, I am very sorry if you listen to
Did you say that?
this.
I thought you said
I
Nancy.
did say that. Oh, I
I
must
think
have.
you did.
You know what? I think I sneezed during that or something like that. So sorry about that.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Amy.
everyone.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thanks for joining us today for I Am Home with Tyler Weisskopf, Hillary Waltemath, and Becca Sudbeck. No one knows home quite like NFM. So if you'd like more information on home design at NFM, please check out nfm.com and leave us a review on the podcast platform of your choice.